Well, hey everybody, I'm Michael Osinski.
And I am Tyler Esselman.
And you are listening to This One Goes to 11.
This One Goes to 11 is our podcast. We're back. And we are, it's our podcast where we invite someone on each week to make their case for what they believe is a perfect album.
So perfect that 10 out of 10 just isn't good enough.
We're still doing this old song and dance. We're still...
It's true. And we're back in the Zoom room, y'all. We are no longer in person, so
it's a poor substitute, but it is a adequate substitute, I guess, is how I'm feeling about it now.
Yeah. And you know what, Tyler? Like, if we didn't do this in a Zoom room, we wouldn't be able to talk with our guest today because our guest is not even in the same country as we are right now.
It's true. We love it when that happens.
Technology is amazing.
Yes, it's we're truly blessed. We're hashtag blessed. The kids don't even say that anymore, I'm sure, but I'm gonna invoke it. Michael, who are we talking to today?
We're talking to Lindsay Teske.
Lindsay Teske, a new friend of the pod. After getting her start in the music industry by packaging vinyl and hanging posters in venue bathrooms, Lindsay is now the founder of Carnival of Oddities PR and co-founder of Hush magazine. She moved from Chicago to London for her master's in 2019, where she wrote her dissertation on the Sex Pistols, eyebrow raise, wonder if we're going to be talking about them, and has been residing there since. We're excited to have Lindsay on the pod. It's our second time going international, though you are an American citizen, so it's a little bit different. There's nuance upon nuance. Wait, who am I talking to, Michael?
You're talking to Lindsay. Hi, Lindsay. How's it going?
Hi. Thank you guys for having me. I'm glad to be here.
What time is it there?
It is 4:10 p.m.
Okay, always doing these. Okay, 8 hours. 8 hours for me. Gotcha. I need to memorize these time zone differences a little bit better.
But isn't it different? Don't they do something different for daylight savings? Like, doesn't it all get screwed up for like a month or two, and it's not as easy to figure out?
Yeah, kind of. It's like pretty standard, like spring forward, fall back. But it alternates between Greenwich or Greenwich. I don't know how they pronounce it here. I know how we pronounce it, Americans. For lack of better terms, I'm just going to say Greenwich Mean Time and British Summertime. So it's like same
British
thing, but just different terminology.
Okay,
that's such a nice. I like British Summertime better than Daylight Savings Time. You know, like I kind of like that. It's a little bit more direct, maybe.
Well, also, it's like I never know. Are we in daylight savings time or are we? It's called something called standard time or
it's standard time. Otherwise,
and I don't. Yeah. So when's standard? Like at least the Brits over there, they put the season in the title, so I know when it's happening.
I'm okay with us getting rid of it. Like I'm for it.
Hot take.
Hey, listen, this is an anti daylight savings time podcast officially. I'm going to make us that.
I don't think you should proclaim that. You haven't spoken to me about this first, Tyler.
That's true. We need to have an admin meeting about this. But you know what we are pro on this podcast is Sam Lopez. And we are very pro Sam Lopez on this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Multiple appearances, which is not many people have that distinction yet. But she is among the select crew who have multiple appearances on the pod. And she is how we came to know you. And this is so you and Sam have Hush magazine, which I think we spoke about a little bit on our summer songs episode.
Yeah, so it's a new music publication that Sam and I are in the early stages of putting together. And the idea behind it is that we want to amplify writers, ideas, stories, bands that otherwise might get like hushed if they're pitched before like corporate mainstream outlet. And it's been really fun to work on putting that together with her. She and I have co-written a couple articles together at Consequence before, so we already knew that we liked working together and that we had a lot of like tastes and industry perspectives in common. And so we've been working on that kind of like here and there throughout the year. At the time, we're aiming to launch by like December, January, and
cool.
So yeah, that'll hopefully when Hush will be out into the world. But right now it definitely kind of feels like mine and Sam's baby, but we're also like super excited to like share it with everyone once we have it. But yeah,
I'm sure it is as involved as having a child, trying to put that project together. So I don't think the baby, okay, I want to come back to this, but we got to get to the business of the pod, don't we? We're gonna, maybe we can record some bonus content or something about that. But Lindsay, will you tell us, with no further delay, what album hath thou brought before This One Goes to 11 tribunal today?
I have bought Never Mind the Bollocks. It's the Sex Pistols by the Sex Pistols.
Excellent. Now this is a punk album. So I'm really interested to talk about kind of punk at large with you too, which has come up in a few conversations thus far. And I mean, kind of Sex Pistols is one of those ubiquitous. I don't know if they were like really on the list of bands we were waiting to talk about, but they certainly were just off of it if they weren't. You know, this is kind of one of those legend status bands. But all that being said, sometimes those legends fall through the cracks for people, depending on where you live, how you grew up, those kind of things. Some people out there may not be familiar with the Sex Pistols story, and we have a very convenient feature to catch people up on that. Michael, what's that feature called?
That feature is called The Beginner's Guide to Never Mind the Bollocks. Here's the Sex Pistols by the Sex Pistols in 60 seconds.
What a mouthful! And we're still going to do it, and this is going to be your opportunity, Lindsay, to assess Michael's job summarizing this band and this album. Which that seems like it was probably a task, Michael. Was this a task for you?
This one's going to be tight. This one's
okay.
I'm going to have to motor mouth my way through this one because I left out. Oh, it's funny how much I left out for how short the career of the Sex Pistols actually was. Right. That's what I will say.
All right. Well, Lindsay, are you ready to hear Michael's effort?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. I've got 60 seconds on the clock. You ready, Michael?
Yeah.
We're starting in 3, 2, 1.
Fuck off, everyone. We're talking about the Sex Pistols, the band that brought punk to the UK in the 70s. Though primarily known for loudmouth vocalist Johnny Rotten and violent, drug-addicted bassist Sid Vicious, the band was formed by Steve Jones, Paul Cook, Wally Nightingale, and, arguably, fashion designers Malcolm McLaren and Vivienne Westwood. They achieved mainstream notoriety after a live TV appearance in 1976 where they swore a lot. They followed this up with the single God Save the Queen, comparing the English monarchy to a fascist regime, which coincided with the Queen's Silver Jubilee and which soon got banned from all British radio. After being dropped from 2 labels, they released Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols in 1977, which got the band in trouble for obscenity because of the title, but is now on all the lists of important albums. Less than a year later, Johnny Rotten announced the band's breakup on stage, and a year after that, Sid Vicious died of an overdose after having been arrested for the murder of his girlfriend Nancy, and they briefly reunited in 1996, released a rockumentary in 2000, and then promptly rejected admission into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2006. How fucking punk is that?
Nice. You're literally the last possible second.
That was a rough one. Okay.
I'm going to applaud you on that one. That was pretty
good. It felt energizing to do that, though. So,
I bet.
So, Lindsay, you are a Sex Pistols scholar. So tell me, how did I do summarizing the band and the album in just 60 seconds?
I think you did a great job. You hit on all the major points. No notes for me. That was pretty damn fantastic.
Strong start. Strong start for a very momentous band.
Yeah. Woo. Well, I will take that. I will take that willingly, and I will hold it close to my heart. But now, Lindsay, before we jump too far into the artist and the album, we like to ask our guests a more broad-based question, which is, what's your relationship with music, past and present?
Yeah, my relationship with music, and I would say this goes for like both past and present, it's that I've always viewed it as a sort of like on-demand Greek course to kind of accompany me through anything I'm going through or feeling, or to help amplify, process, or marinate in those feelings. And I've always found that to be super helpful. Like, for example, if I've had like a really bad day and I'm like super pissed off, I'll listen to the Misfits, and then all of a sudden the bad day's a bit better because Glenn Danzig is screaming in my ears and he's just as angry as I am. And suddenly I'm like not alone in that anger anymore. And yeah, whether I'm like happy, sad, whatever, good moments, bad moments, I've always like found it really helpful to have a song or a band accompany me. It's like you can immediately access people who are feeling the way you felt, and suddenly it's like it's not so like in your head, or you don't feel so trapped in like the situation or how you're feeling, because a million other people have felt that same way before and they've made songs about it that you can then access in your time of need. So yeah.
Conveniently.
Yeah.
Super conveniently now. That's kind of one of the things, isn't it? Well said. Jeez, man. Ooh, okay. That was, it's like you're a music journalist or something.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel like, when do you feel like punk came in for you? I guess as a concept and a literal like musical manifestation in your life.
I started really sinking my teeth into punk. I'd had like a prior knowledge because I was fortunate enough to be raised by very cool parents. My dad was like
Cool.
super into the Ramones. He showed me Rock and Roll High School when I was like 7. So I'd always had
Thanks,
too young
Dad.
for that, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'd always had like sort of a surface level knowledge of punk, but I started really like getting into it and getting into bands that maybe weren't as popular in the States in 2017, because I turned to punk to help me cope with like the rage I felt from Trump being elected. And I was 19 at the time, and so that was like the first time in my life that I felt like personally impacted by just how like unfair and cruel and dark the world can be. And as a result of that, that was the first time that I experienced like getting mad at a country, because it's like you're growing up, you're blinded by like the innocence of youth, and then you're an adult and you look around and you realize that the older generations have made the world virtually completely inhospitable for your own. And then now it's on you all to just deal with that, to deal with the faults, the fractures, the mistakes that they made and inherit that. And that's just, it pisses you off and it feels unjust. But beyond that, it feels like a betrayal, because that's the generation that raised you and helped you kind of get an idea that things might be okay, and then they're not. And it's like, okay, well, thanks, guys.
Right.
And so that's actually how I ended up finding Never Mind the Bollocks, because that was sort of like the first album I found where I was like, okay, they're mad at a country too. They feel exactly the way I felt.
Yeah. Jeez. Yeah. That's kind of it, isn't it? I mean, there is something, we talk about anger a fair amount on this podcast, and I feel like using it as a tool, there's so many ways in which specifically anger can be accessed through music in a really, I don't want to say safe way, because I feel like using the word safe in an episode about the Sex Pistols should be against the rules, you know, like there shouldn't, I don't know. Like Michael, where do you feel like how do you feel like anger has manifested itself in these conversations we've been having on the pod?
That feels like an essay question for a test. I'm trying to like put everything together. Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't think we've talked about anger that's been, well, okay, let me start again. I don't know that we've talked about that on you. Sorry. No, it's okay. I don't know. It's okay. You can keep this part in. I don't know that we've talked about anger in such a focused way as we might today. I mean, because I think, but I don't know if focus is the right word, because I was going to have a question for you, Lindsay, which was about like, what are punk artists raging against? Like sometimes whenever I hear punk music, it always seems to me like it's just everything. Like whatever the establishment is, that's what they would rage against. And when if I were to try and like isolate the politics of the Sex Pistols, I come down to like anti-monarchy, anti-fascism.
For sure.
And but then beyond that, like I don't know, because I haven't done like a lot of research, but there are punk bands who like verge into skinhead territory, and there are punk bands who are like super anti-queer. So like where, I guess in terms of like anger, I think punk can be a dangerous tool. Like what has been your experience with this genre and other bands connected to Sex Pistols?
Yeah, so I guess just for me personally, I've never considered like skinhead movement when it's kind of like co-opted in the wrong way, or like the bigotry fascist offshoot of punk to be punk. Because I think from my interpretation of it, having explored this topic academically, is that like punk is something that sort of not the right side of history isn't like quite the right words, but it's like it's anti-establishment, but in like the way you would want it to be. I think like sort of a cornerstone of punk is that it's sort of like there's an element of that it like fights for fairness. And if you're obviously anti-queer, if you're like a punk band that promotes racism or anything like that, that is like inherently against what my perception of the values of the genre are. So I guess that's what I would say to that. But beyond that, that excluded, I think something that is so wonderful about the genre is that the thing you're raging against can be anything. I often think back to that scene in School of Rock when Dewey is trying to get the kids to get angry, and he's like, I didn't get no allowance today, so I'm really pissed off. Yeah, like it can be anything. It can be like your teacher was like mean to you. It can be like, I don't know, you had like a weird misunderstanding with your parents, or you got math homework on a Friday, or your boss is being a bit of a dick. Like, there's literally no limit. And for whatever it is you're going through, punk can be an outlet for all of those like upsets, no matter how like big or small they are. Like, I've turned to punk when like I worked at a pub for 8 days. I quit because my feelings just can't handle drunk men yelling at me. I
don't blame you.
Right? It's just too much. Drunk men who are really passionate about sports. I can't.
As a man who has in my life been drunk and passionate about sports at the same time, I know that we are not hospitable people, and that we are not fit for human consumption. I say this. I fully own that.
Well, before we get too far into like Sex Pistols and punk, though, I'm curious, like thinking still like broad based. Do you listen to music for other reasons? Like, are there non-punk genres or artists that like you grew up listening to that have also influenced you?
Yeah, I've always kind of stuck within like the general like rock wheelhouse. The first band I ever got really into was Led Zeppelin. When I was like 12, I just like would almost exclusively listen to like Kashmir on repeat. And like
sweet. You were that girl.
Yeah. And I was like one of those kids who viewed like growing up in the suburbs as like a personal insult.
Yeah. Same.
I was definitely like Dawn Wiener in Welcome to the Dollhouse. Just like the existence of suburbia was just like offensive to me. I couldn't do it. And I never liked school, just all of that. And so I'd like be walking through the hallway with my iPod Shuffle, and I would be listening to Kashmir, and I'd just be like, oh, I'm in this school, but I'm also in this like fantasy land that Robert Plant is singing about all at once. Yeah. So it's very much helped me to kind of like check out when I needed to most. I also very much got into like the Runaways and Joan Jett at a young age as well, and I think that was definitely like a gateway into punk, and like her and that band was hugely influential on me. But now as I've gotten older, I kind of like branch out a bit more, which is never something I really saw for myself, but like I listen to the Village People like a lot.
Wow, I would not have clocked that.
Yeah, all the bands that you could have invoked there to the Village People was probably like the last one I thought you were going to say, which is great. That's so funny.
I just have a real love for anything like a bit campy, like disco adjacent, just like happy. And I find that like when I'm like at my most frustrated, like a time I would have maybe ordinarily turned to punk, I also turn to like the Village People as much as I turn to like Typo Negative and like the Misfits and the Sex Pistols.
Jesus, I'm sorry. I just want to imagine a playlist that has the Village People and Typo Negative on it at the same time. Like that,
that's so good.
What do you even call that playlist? What's the title for that playlist?
I actually did make a playlist on it once. Sam and I for Hush, we were like, as like an introductory thing, we were like, oh, let's make a playlist that's like Sam in 10 songs and Lindsay in 10 songs. And I think on mine I have like Black Number One and Macho Man like back to back.
What the hell? That's so funny.
Nice.
Oh, that's so good.
I love it.
Sorry, that completely distracted me. I had a thought, and I was like, I was ready to. You completely knocked me off. Knocked me off track there. Let's talk about the Sex Pistols though now, because we like to find out if you remember like the moment, and you strike me as the kind of person who probably remembers the moment that you discovered this album. I mean, you wrote a dissertation on it, so it wouldn't be surprising to me if you did. Do you remember your meet cute with this particular album?
Yes. So it was the summer of 2017. It was like, and sometime in mid-July, I was like doing my band search to just deal with like the Trump of it all. And this was also a month before I went to London for the first time. I did just like a quick semester abroad thing. And I was just clicking around on Spotify and I was like looking up like different bands and like the specific like, I guess for lack of better terms, issue they were known for like making music about or that inspired their music.
Yeah.
And that's when I found the Sex Pistols. I had known about them before. I had probably heard like Anarchy or God Save the Queen here and there, but I never really like kind of did like the deep dive. And then because I hadn't done that, I didn't have like the knowledge or appreciation. And then I started doing that and I was like, oh, okay. Like I completely relate to everything they're upset about. And I just found it to be hugely comforting. And as a result of that, they definitely became the first band that I not only liked, but felt like very connected to and understood by. And
Hell yeah.
and then when I was like later in the UK for the first time, I'd be like going around like looking for elements of society that they would have like been upset about. I was living in South Kensington at the time, which is like a very like posh neighborhood. And I was like, ugh, John Lydon would have hated this. Like, and so I tried to like see the world through their eyes. And then that album's just kind of like been very prominent in my life ever since.
Wow. What's expat life like? Is it like is it rough? Seems like it'd be kind of rough.
Yep. Yeah. It's there's no other way to say it. I mean, it's nice, and I feel very privileged to have the opportunity to live in another country, but that privilege comes at like a huge cost, a lot of it literal. It sucks. The government is very like anti-migrant. I've had a lot of like difficulties switching visas and stuff because they just try to make the process like as hard as possible to deter people.
Right.
People here, I'm technically half British by marriage, so I feel like I can, rag on them from a place of love a bit.
Yeah.
There is kind of that like American thing, and I'm just like, all the same problems that like exist for us exist for you, so like shut up. Like
Well, that's an interesting angle on it, because I do feel like, and this I do think this kind of relates to the Sex Pistols, so I don't think we're that far off. We're not that far off here. I do think there is. I've always felt this kind of being part of, being a citizen of, these major colonial powers historically, even though the context is way longer for the UK, obviously, but even in our short 250-year history, that we are kind of like dealing with a lot of the same issues of being citizens of these kind of countries. So I feel a kinship in a lot of ways when I hear songs like, songs that are very pointed towards the monarchy, because I kind of like, I kind of get it, or I kind of like on some sort of weird primal civic level, I sort of like appreciate that sense of trying to navigate your way through the cognitive dissonance that comes with that, right?
Oh yeah, totally. Because like even though obviously we don't have like a monarchy in the States, those same issues and the same like structural societal inequalities that like surround the idea of a monarchy, we definitely have at home. So like that makes total sense. And that's another thing I love about the album. You don't have to know anything like intimate about the UK to like get it, to like kind of have it strike a chord with you, which is like actually one of the reasons I think that this album has happened to endure for as long as it has. So that makes total sense.
I have like vague memories. I don't know how Johnny Rotten feels about America, but I feel like he probably hates it. Because I just sort of like, I remember him appearing on MTV before I knew who the Sex Pistols were, because he would, and this is long after the band had, disbanded, but like he would just, every time I saw him do an interview, he just looked like he hates, he's whenever I've ever seen him, he looks like he hates being wherever he is. And I guess I wonder how much of that is performative and how much of that is just like, no, that's who he is. I mean, you, as someone who has done a fair amount of research on this, like where do you stand on the Johnny Rotten authenticity scale here?
That is a great question. I think a part of it is like probably a bit of an act. I think he knows what like makes him money. And so I think he does, tap into that a bit. But also I think there have been many instances where he's been authentic to a fault. And so that makes me think like, okay, it's probably not all entirely fake. It was interesting. I went to see him speak at Union Chapel, which is like an event space in North London, and like half the crowd was there for who he was and half the crowd was there for who he is. And yeah, he didn't seem like he was particularly pleased to be there, and he got like annoyed at the crowd a few times, and I couldn't decide if I loved or hated that. And then it was like a weirdly alienating experience. And then at the end he tried to get everyone to like sing Bodies with him, and no one really joined in. And then he got mad at the crowd for not joining in, and I was like, you seem upset. Like, well, of course we're not going to be like, yay, let's all sing. So yeah, I've definitely seen, I know exactly what you mean. I've seen a lot of that happen as well, and I totally agree.
That is fascinating, because there's probably some, I don't know, if I was in that situation, I feel like maybe he was expecting some sort of spontaneity from you all to like just do that on your own, just sing Bodies on your own, be like, yeah, sing this with us, please. That's what we want.
Which like, isn't that the song that he swears the most on the album too? So it's like it's requiring the audience to say fuck a bunch of times.
Yeah. It's like after the chorus, his first line is like fuck this and fuck that. So just, all of us singing in a chapel together that song.
I would feel torn about that as well. I think that there's some there's some level of like the little Catholic, the kernel of Catholicism in me would be like, I probably shouldn't be saying fuck in this church right now. Maybe that's not very punk rock of me, but like there's probably still that little bit of like, I'm going to hold off just in case.
It's the magic of Johnny Rotten. He puts you in situations where you have to go, I wonder if I should be singing fuck in this church.
Right. What the fuck?
How punk is that?
I suppose it is.
Well, Lindsay, there's, only one Sex Pistols album. And there's, I guess depending on which version of this album you have, it's either 11 or 12 tracks. But we're curious to know, what is your standout track from the album?
Okay, obviously this is a very hard decision to make because I think all of them could be argued as standouts for different reasons. But in the end, I ended up picking God Save the Queen because...
Hold. Let's let our listeners hear a little bit of it first, and then we'll learn more about why you chose it. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. Just trying to
no worries.
Trying to preserve the format
illusion.
of the pod. All right, here we go.